He pinched my binder between two fingers like he was afraid of catching office dust, then held it up with a smirk. "What is this? A Jurassic relic?" Lightning split the horizon. 57 minutes later, his precious cloud flatlined at 41%. And while the entire company gasped for air in the darkness, I opened my binder. The same one he'd tossed toward the coffee machine. The same one that would save every last one of us, except him. My name is Lydia Hart, and I've been protecting Vectorloom Industries from itself for 14 years. That Tuesday morning in the Atlas conference room, I watched our new COO perform what I can only describe as technological theater, holding my disaster recovery binder aloft like evidence of corporate backwardness. "Look at this," Brandon Vale announced, his manicured fingers barely grazing the worn tabs I'd color-coded through 3 ransomware attacks and 2 regional blackouts. The fluorescent lights hummed their usual migraine-inducing frequency, mixing with the smell of burnt coffee from the machine nobody ever cleaned. "This is what's holding us back from true digital transformation." The room laughed. That peculiar corporate laugh that sounds like drowning. I counted faces, 16 department heads, all suddenly fascinated by their laptops or the motivational posters about synergy. Only Dr. Marcel Quinn, our CTO, remained unreadable, her expression as neutral as Swiss tax law. "Paper," Brandon continued, letting the word drip with disgust. "Physical documentation, manual processes." He walked toward the coffee station, my binder dangling from his grip. "We're supposed to be industry leaders, not museum curators." The binder hit the counter with a wet slap. Someone had spilled creamer there earlier. 14 years of meticulously updated phone trees, power grid mappings, and offline recovery protocols, now decorated with French vanilla. Effective immediately. Brandon's voice cut through the nervous silence. "We're going cloud only. Full digital transformation. No more hybrid systems, no more legacy clutches, and definitely," he gestured at my coffee-stained life's work, "no more paper trails." I didn't move, didn't speak. When you've been in continuity planning as long as I have, you learn to recognize the sound of someone sawing through their own safety net. The younger staff members were already nodding, typing notes about streamlining and optimization. They'd never seen what happens when the lights go out, and the only thing between you and total operational collapse is knowing which circuit breaker hasn't been upgraded since 1987. "Questions?" Brandon asked, though his tone suggested he'd rather perform his own root canal than hear any. "Just one," I said, my voice steady as bedrock. "When the cloud fails..." "If..." Brandon interrupted. "If it fails, which it won't, because we're investing in triple redundancy across 3 availability zones." "If," I conceded, tasting copper in my mouth. "The cloud fails, what's your manual restoration timeline?" He actually laughed. "Manual?" "Lydia, this isn't 1995. Everything auto-recovers. Everything syncs. That's the beauty of modern infrastructure." "Doctor." Quinn shifted slightly in her chair, the first movement she'd made all meeting. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. Not sympathy. Something else. Recognition. Maybe. The kind that passes between soldiers who've seen the same war from different trenches. "I'd like to keep the physical documentation as backup." I tried once more. Just until... No. Brandon's smile could have frozen hellfire. "We're not paying you to maintain a museum exhibit. The continuity and resilience team will focus on cloud architecture going forward. Unless you'd prefer a different role." The threat hung there like a blade. Around me, colleagues studied their coffee cups with archaeological intensity. Even Tom Reeves from Facilities, who'd once helped me map every emergency exit by flashlight during the 2019 blackout, wouldn't meet my gaze. "I understand," I said. "Excellent." Brandon clapped his hands once, sharp as a gunshot. "Meeting adjourned. Lydia, please dispose of that artifact. We're presenting to investors next month, and I want 0 analog footprint in our disaster recovery presentations." As everyone filed out, I retrieved my binder from its coffee puddle. The pages had already started to brown at the edges, the ink bleeding through layers like old wounds. Elsa Duarte, Quinn's assistant, paused at the door. She glanced back, opened her mouth as if to speak, then thought better of it. I was alone with the ghost of 14 years' work and the absolute certainty that Brandon Vale had just signed Vector Loom's death warrant. He just didn't know it yet. The storm would come. They always do in Pennsylvania. And when it did, when his precious cloud evaporated at the first lightning strike, I'd be ready. I tucked the binder under my arm, feeling its familiar weight. Brandon wanted me to throw it away. Instead, I'd perfect it. Update every circuit, map every vulnerability he was creating. Because that's what you do when someone burns your bridge. You learn to swim. And you make damn sure you're the only one who knows where the life rafts are hidden. The memo hit our inboxes at 6:47 a.m. Wednesday morning. The sweep? Cloud only in 30 days. Brandon's digital signature gleamed at the bottom like a cattle brand. I read it while standing in the freight elevator, my new office, a folding table by the loading dock, waiting for me 12 floors below my former workspace. Effective immediately, all legacy systems will be decommissioned, physical servers, sunset by Friday, offline mirrors, deleted, local recovery points, eliminated. Welcome to the future. My new asset tagging duties came with read-only access and a view of delivery trucks. The demotion was surgical. I still technically worked in continuity and resilience, just without the continuity. Resilience or respect. Brandon had even CC'd the entire company on my transition to specialized inventory management. Jesus, Lydia, they got you counting boxes. Noah Pike, one of our younger developers, found me Thursday afternoon between a pallet of toner and a broken photocopier. He clutched a coffee like a lifeline. This is insane. It's strategic, I said, scanning a barcode on a defunct server Brandon had marked for recycling. What brings you to the basement? He glanced around nervously. I was looking through some old documentation from 2017. There was something about offline triggers you'd written. For cascading failures? I can't find it on the cloud. That's because it was never digitized, I said carefully. Brandon's orders. Noah shifted his weight. But what if we need it? Then I suppose we're fucked, aren't we? He left, but not before I caught him photographing the whiteboard where I'd been sketching power distribution patterns during my lunch breaks. Friday brought Elsa Duarte. She appeared at my folding table like a ghost, holding a USB drive between French-tipped nails. I'm supposed to wipe this, she said, loud enough for the security camera to pick up. Then, quieter. Legacy layouts. Thought you might want to say goodbye. She set it on my table and walked away. The label read FYI in her neat handwriting. I palmed it, felt its weight, heavier than it should be. Later, in the bathroom stall, I'd find it contained not just layouts, but authentication keys, network diagrams, and a note. Some of us remember 2019. The real surprise came from Rena Alvarez, the 22-year-old temp who'd been hired to help with the sweep. She found me reorganizing my binder during lunch, the only time I allowed myself to work on it openly. My dad's an electrician, she said, watching me update a hand-drawn circuit diagram. He says digital's great until it isn't. Smart man. He also says the Graybridge power grid's held together with prayer and duct tape. She pulled out her phone, showed me a photo. This is from the substation near the river. See that rust? I saw more than rust. I saw opportunity. Rena, how would you like to learn about disaster recovery? Isn't that what got you sent down here? No, I corrected. Believing in it did. She became my unexpected ally, using her inventory access to gather intelligence. Every obsolete system Brandon decommissioned, we documented. Every backup power connection he eliminated, we mapped. The kid had a photographic memory for numbers and a healthy disrespect for authority, both invaluable assets. Meanwhile, Brandon's cloud renaissance moved forward with religious fervor. He held daily stand-ups in the Atlas Room, my former space, preaching about digital transformation and agile resilience. The old servers were wheeled out like condemned prisoners. The backup generators' maintenance contracts were canceled, redundant expenses. According to his Tuesday memo, Dr. Quinn watched it all with the expression of someone counting cards at a casino. She never spoke against Brandon publicly, but her assistant kept accidentally leaving useful documents in my inventory queue. Jonah Tiller from infrastructure would sometimes eat lunch by the loading dock, casually mentioning which HVAC systems were being optimized out of isolation. We were becoming something I hadn't expected. A shadow network of people who remembered what happened when systems failed. Not rebels, exactly. More like people quietly building lifeboats while the captain insisted the ship was unsinkable. My binder grew thicker. Each lunch hour, I added another page. Manual phone trees constructed from personal cell numbers. Physical locations of every circuit breaker Brandon had removed from the building's smart management system. The exact sequence needed to cold start our data center without automated assistance. "You know he monitors the security cameras," Rena warned one afternoon, watching me work. "Let him," I said, adding a new tab labeled "When Lightning Strikes." "He thinks this is a symptom of not adapting to change. He can't imagine I'm adapting to his failure." She smiled, the kind of smile you say for watching someone dig their own grave. "My dad says storms are coming. Big ones. Something about the pressure systems this year." I looked up from my binder, met her eyes. "Then we'd better be ready." "We." "Everyone, Brandon's about to fail." I closed the binder carefully, ran my hand along its coffee-stained spine. Which, by my count, is everyone. Sunday night. I sat in my kitchen with 3 phones, a laminating machine I'd bought from a closing office supply store, and the determination of someone building an ark while everyone else trusted the weather forecast. The binder had evolved from documentation to battle plan. Each page I sealed in plastic represented another piece of the shadow infrastructure Brandon couldn't see. Tab 1. Power distribution. Real. Not the sanitized smart grid readouts, but the actual cables, their age, their load capacity. The junction boxes everyone forgot existed. I'd spent Saturday with Rena's father, tracing lines from the river substation to our building. The man knew every splice, every weakness. "This transformer here," he'd said, tapping a rust-eaten box. "That's your Achilles heel. One good strike, and she's done." Tab 2 emerged from Elsa's USB drive, authentication protocols for systems Brandon didn't know still existed. The man had decommissioned our visible servers but forgotten about the NAS units in the sub-basement, labeled obsolete but still humming, still containing snapshot backups from 6 months ago. I wrote down their physical locations, access codes, and boot sequences in waterproof ink. The phone tree took 3 hours to construct, not email addresses, phones, landlines where they existed, personal cells where they didn't. I called each number, let it ring once, hung up. Those who called back got added to the inner circle. Dr. Quinn's home number rang back within minutes. "Insurance?" she asked. "Flood coverage," I replied. We understood each other. Noah Pike had left a gift in the loading dock Friday evening, a printed stack of bootloader configurations from 2017 before our systems were optimized. His sticky note read, "Found these in my desk drawer. Thought they were recycling. Smart kid." He'd even highlighted the manual override sequences, the ones that bypassed cloud authentication entirely. My masterpiece occupied tab 3, the Phoenix Protocol. If Brandon's cloud died, this was resurrection, step by step, handwritten, illustrated with diagrams I'd drawn at 2 a.m. while drinking coffee strong enough to wake the dead. How to isolate damaged systems. How to reroute power through the HVAC panel that Jonah had confirmed was still on the emergency circuit. How to bring up the minimum viable infrastructure using equipment Brandon had marked for disposal but which still sat in storage room B2, forgotten. I sealed each page like I was preserving evidence for a future trial. Because that's what this was, evidence that someone had seen the iceberg coming. Monday. I found Jonah Tiller examining the loading dock's ventilation system. "Funny thing," he said, not looking at me. These old HVAC controls still have manual overrides, mechanical, not digital. Brandon's automation can't touch them. Interesting, I said. More interesting, they're on a separate circuit, one that happens to share a backbone with the old server room in B2. He pulled out a cigarette he wouldn't light, just rolled it between his fingers. If someone knew the right sequence, they could power that whole section independently. If someone had, say, documented it. He glanced at my binder. Hypothetically. That afternoon, I conducted my first full drill, alone, in my head, eyes closed at my folding table. Power fails. Cloud connection drops. Emergency generators fail to start because Brandon canceled their maintenance. I counted 4 minutes to reach the basement electrical room, 2 minutes to throw the manual switches, 3 minutes to confirm isolation, 8 minutes to begin cold boot procedures, 17 minutes total to minimum viable operation. I could do better. The security guard, Marcus, watched me sometimes. Tuesday afternoon, he stopped by my table. "You preparing for something, Ms. Hart?" "Always," I said. He nodded slowly. "My grandmother lived through Hurricane Agnes in '72, lost everything except what she kept in a waterproof box in the attic." He paused. "She said the people who survived best were the ones who never stopped believing in disasters." Smart woman. She also said they called her crazy until the water started rising. He walked away, then turned back. "Storage room B2's lock is broken, has been for weeks. Maintenance tickets in the system, but..." He shrugged. Brandon reassigned the maintenance team to smart building integration. The message was clear. The door was open. That night, I visited B2 with a flashlight and a stopwatch. The old Dell servers sat under dust covers, powered down but intact. The manual I'd written claimed 17 minutes to restore. I ran the sequence in the dark, hands moving from memory. 15 minutes, 30 seconds, again. 14 minutes, 45 seconds, again. 13 minutes, 20 seconds. By Thursday, I had it down to 11 minutes flat. My hands knew every switch, every cable, every boot sequence. I'd become a one-woman disaster recovery team, trained in the dark for a darkness I knew was coming. The binder grew to nearly 200 pages, each one a piece of infrastructure Brandon had deleted from our reality, but which still existed in the physical world. I added photos Rena took during her inventory rounds, pictures of junction boxes, server serial numbers, the exact location of every emergency phone. "You know what you remind me of?" Rena said Thursday evening, watching me laminate the final pages. "What?" "Those monks who memorized entire libraries before the Vikings came." I looked up from my work. "Did it work?" "We still have the books, don't we?" I sealed the last page, felt the weight of the complete binder. It was perfect. Everything needed to resurrect Vectorloom from a total cloud failure, written in waterproof ink on laminated pages, organized with military precision. "The weather report says storms this weekend," Rena mentioned casually. I looked out the window at the clearing sky, then at my binder. "Then I guess we'll see who's been paying attention." Thursday afternoon. The sky turned the color of a 3-day-old bruise. The air conditioning in the West Wing, the one Brandon hadn't upgraded to smart climate control, started its death rattle at 12:47 p.m. I felt the humidity creep in like a premonition, thick enough to taste. From my folding table by the loading dock, I had a perfect view of the outside world dying. The flags on the building across the street hung limp, then suddenly snapped horizontal. The pressure change made my ears pop. Even the delivery drivers were rushing, throwing packages and running for their trucks. "Big one coming," Marcus said, making his rounds. "Emergency management's already issued warnings for the River District." "Has anyone told Brandon?" "Mr. Vale's in the Atlas B conference room, preparing for his 2 o'clock. Marcus's expression was carefully neutral. Something about live streaming resilience through real-time data. Of course he was. I opened my binder to the tab marked Critical Failure Points and reviewed my notes one last time. 3 vulnerabilities I'd identified, all created by Brandon's optimizations. First, the building's main ground hadn't been properly isolated after the cloud integration. A significant surge would travel through every connected system like nerve poison. Second, the HVAC and UPS systems now shared a power loop, Brandon's efficiency measure. If one failed, they'd take each other down in a cascade. Third, the internal warning system had been disabled 2 weeks ago. Redundant with cloud monitoring, Brandon's memo had said, nobody would know anything was wrong until everything was wrong. I closed the binder and taped a yellow sticky note to the cover. Multi-site physical restoration V4.1. Let him mock it later, if there was a later for him. At 1:15, Avery Stone from compliance appeared at my table, sweating despite the air conditioning still technically working. Lydia, weird question. The 2022 audit files, Terry says they're cloud-only now? Everything's cloud-only now. Right, but... She lowered her voice. We have an SEC request, due tomorrow. If we can't access those files... I'm sure Brandon's triple redundancy will protect you, I said evenly. She laughed, but it came out cracked. You don't believe that any more than I do. What I believe doesn't matter anymore. I count boxes now. Dana Whitlow from legal joined us, her usually perfect hair already frizzing from the humidity. The insurance documentation, she said without preamble. Please tell me someone has physical copies. Ask Brandon. I did. He said digital copies are more secure. She looked ready to cry. Lydia, if those files are lost, we're talking about... I know what we're talking about. I glanced at my binder but didn't open it. Not yet. Where's your team? Freaking out quietly on the 15th floor. Half of them are trying to download critical files to their laptops, but the network's already slow. The lights flickered, just once. Barely noticeable. But I noticed. The emergency lighting ran a diagnostic check. LEDs flashing in sequence like a heartbeat, then settled back to sleep. It's starting, I said. They both looked at me. What's starting? I pointed out the window. The sky had gone green, that particular shade that makes every Pennsylvanian reach for their emergency kit. In the distance, a siren wailed. You should probably get to your floors, I suggested. Brandon's about to start his presentation. They left, but not before exchanging glances that said everything. We're fucked, aren't we? At 1:30, I took a walk. Not my usual inventory rounds, but a farewell tour. The mainframe room Brandon had converted to a meditation space. I ran my hand along the wall where the old servers used to hum. The network closet on 7, now a supply room, still had the ghost marks of cable runs on the walls. The basement electrical room, where I'd spent so many midnight hours during crisis recoveries, now decorated with smart panel displays that required cloud authentication to operate. In the Atlas B conference room, Brandon's voice carried through the glass walls. Resilience isn't about planning for failure, he was saying to his laptop camera, broadcasting to God knows how many investors. It's about building systems that can't fail. Thunder answered him, close enough to feel in my chest. The first drops hit the windows at 1:41, fat, heavy things that sounded like accusations. Brandon kept talking, gesturing at his slides about seamless cloud integration and zero downtime architecture. His audience, mostly junior staff who hadn't been through the 2019 blackout, nodded along, typing notes they'd never be able to access in about 6 minutes. I returned to my table and did what I'd been doing for 3 weeks. Updated my binder. But this time, I wrote on the inside cover, in red ink. When this is over, remember, every decision has a name attached. Every cut corner has a signature. Every dismissed warning has a timestamp. The cloud didn't fail us. Brandon Vale did. At 1:42, the light surged bright enough to leave after images, then dimmed to brown. Someone screamed on an upper floor. Brandon's voice continued, unaware, promising investors that Vector Loom had eliminated all single points of failure. Lightning struck close enough to taste copper. The lights went out, then came back, then died for good. In the darkness, I heard Brandon's live stream cut off mid-word. Reliability is our core compet. I opened my binder and smiled. The emergency lights hadn't triggered. The generators hadn't started. Somewhere in the cloud, our data was beginning its 57-minute journey to 41% and death. Time to go to work. The darkness hit like a physical thing. Not the gradual dimming of a power down, but instant, absolute black. The lightning strike had been close enough to make my teeth ache. And in its aftermath, the building held its breath. Then came the sounds. The dying wheeze of air handlers spinning down. The click, click, click of emergency exits failing to illuminate. And from somewhere above, the beautiful music of Brandon Vale's panic. Where's it? His voice carried down the stairwell, sharp with the kind of fear that comes from realizing you've cut your own parachute. I stayed at my folding table, counting. The generators should have kicked in at 3 seconds. We passed 10, 20, 30, nothing. My phone, personal, not company, buzzed with texts from the shadow network. Noah. Cloud portals unreachable. Elsa. Generator 1, no response. Jonah. Generator 2 just made a sound like a dying whale. Rena. You seeing this? Whole river district's dark. From upstairs, the chaos orchestra was tuning up. Voices overlapped in the kind of harmony you only get from synchronized panic. Someone was shouting about payroll. Someone else about production deadlines. Through it all, Brandon's voice, less commanding now. The cloud backup will restore everything. It's automatic. I knew exactly what was happening 16 floors up in what used to be our data center. The cloud restore process had initiated. Brandon was right about that much. It was checking for local assets to sync, finding none because he'd decommissioned them, attempting to pull from the primary cloud server, failing because the authentication required a handshake with our local domain controller, which was dead, so it would try the secondary protocol, which needed verification from our backup site, which we no longer had. Initializing. Someone read from their dying laptop. Verifying assets, 20%, 30, 40, 41. And there it would stay, like a record skipping on the world's most expensive player. The emergency stairs filled with people. Some had phone flashlights, creating jerky horror movie lighting. I heard Avery Stone's voice. The SEC filing, we need those documents. And Dana from legal. The contracts are all on the cloud, every single one. Production floor was its own symphony of disaster. Through the loading dock, I could hear the robots, million-dollar marvels of automation, grinding to confused stops. Their safety protocols triggered by the power loss. Unable to restart without cloud-based command authentication. Manual override. Someone shouted. There is no manual override, came the response. Brandon had them removed. My phone rang. Dr. Quinn. I answered without speaking. War room, she said. Conference room C. Bring what you need. I stood, picked up my binder, and began climbing stairs. The crowd parted, some recognizing me, most not. On the 7th floor, I passed Brandon. His perfect hair was wilting, his shirt transparent with sweat. He was shouting into a dead desk phone. The vendor promised 5 nines uptime, 5 nines. That's 99.999% uptime, I said as I passed. You're living in the other 0.001%. It lasts about 5 minutes a year. I checked my watch. You've got 4 minutes left. His face went through several colors, none of them healthy. This is your fault somehow. Your negativity, your resistance to change. My resistance to change? I held up the binder. This is 200 pages of how to fix what you broke. But please, keep blaming the person who can save your ass. It's a bold strategy. Conference room C was lit by phone screens and one ancient battery-powered lantern that Marcus had produced from somewhere. Dr. Quinn sat at the head of the table, calm as a frozen lake. CEO Arthur Greaves stood by the window, watching transformers explode in the distance like violent stars. The board is going to crucify me, he said to no one. The board can get in line. Dana interjected. We've got 16 contracts due for regulatory review tomorrow. Without those files. 41%, Brandon announced from the doorway, phone in hand like a dead talisman. It's been 41% for 6 minutes. It'll stay there, I said. Your cloud needs local authentication to restore. The local systems need cloud authentication to start. You've created a perfect circle of failure. Then we're finished. Greaves turned from the window. The production floor alone, we're losing $50,000 a minute. Actually, I said, opening my binder. We're losing $73,000. I did the math last week. The room went quiet except for the sound of rain hammering the windows. Brandon stepped forward. You planned this. You sabotaged. I documented everything you destroyed, I corrected. Every system you decommissioned. Every backup you eliminated. Every warning you ignored. I turned to Quinn. The old infrastructure still exists. Brandon just made it invisible. I can bring it back, but I need hands. You can't possibly, Brandon started. Shut up, Quinn said, not loudly, but with enough ice to freeze the rain outside. What do you need? I flipped to tab 1. Jonah Tiller to access panel 17C in the basement. Noah Pike to assist with server restoration in storage room B2. Elsa to coordinate communications using the analog phone system that still works because it's copper-based. And Rena Alvarez to run messages between teams. That's your recovery team? Brandon laughed, but it came out cracked. A bunch of malcontents and a temp? That's the team that remembers what you made them forget, I said. The question is, do you want the lights back on, or do you want to keep talking? Thunder shook the building. In the distance, another transformer exploded, painting the clouds purple-white. Arthur Greaves looked at the binder in my hands, then at Brandon, then at me. How long? 17 minutes to minimum viable operations, 45 to full restoration. The cloud will restore faster, Brandon began. The cloud is dead. Quinn cut him off. She stood, walked to the door. And in about 30 seconds, so is this company. Unless we let Lydia work. She looked at me. And for the first time in 3 weeks, I saw something I'd almost forgotten existed. Respect. You have the room, she said. Marcel Quinn didn't waste words. She walked past the war room's chaos, down 7 flights of stairs in the dark, her phone light steady as a lighthouse beam. I followed, binder clutched against my chest. We found my folding table by the loading dock, rain hammering the bay doors like an accusation. Still have it? Was all she asked. I opened the binder to the tab marked P1, Power Isolation and Cold Start. The laminated pages gleamed in her phone light. Everything. She studied the diagrams for exactly 3 seconds. Then she turned, raised her voice with the authority of someone who'd survived every corporate disaster since the dot-com bust. Everyone shut up and listen. Lydia Hart has the floor. The war room had followed us down, a parade of executives reduced to frightened children in the dark. Arthur Greaves materialized from the stairwell, his tie loose, carrying what looked like a piece of melted circuit board. He set it on my table without explanation. The smell of burnt silicon filled the space. That's from the main transformer, he said quietly. Direct strike. Brandon stood in the corner, mouth opening and closing like a beached fish. The room went silent, 23 people according to my quick count, every one of them worth 6 figures annually, waiting for the woman they'd watched get demoted to box counter. Jonah, I said, not raising my voice. Panel 17C in the mechanical room. The automated relay is fried, but there's a manual bypass behind it. You'll need to pull the safety pins and throw the knife switch. That's not up to code, Brandon protested weakly. Neither is letting a company die. Quinn responded. Jonah was already moving. I continued. The power will try to route through the main panel. It can't, that's toast. But the old HVAC panel on the east wall still has a direct line to the utility feed. It was never integrated into the smart system because... I looked at Brandon. Someone thought it was redundant. Rena, I continued. Get to the old phone system in the first floor reception. The copper lines still work. Call these numbers in order. I tore a page from my binder, the only one I'd sacrifice. Tell them code Phoenix. They'll know what it means. She ran. I loved that kid. Noah. Elsa. Storage room B2. The NAS units Brandon marked obsolete. They're on battery backup, probably down to 30%, but they have snapshots from 6 months ago. Better than nothing. Those aren't connected to anything, Brandon said. They will be. I turned to Marcus. The wheeled rack of old Dells in B2. They need to move to the 7th floor network closet. The one Brandon turned into a supply room. That's 5 servers, someone said. They weigh 300 pounds each, I finished. Which is why you'll need the freight elevator. It has its own battery backup because it's technically part of the fire suppression system. Another thing Brandon didn't know when he filed those optimization reports. Quinn was already directing people, her voice cutting through confusion like a blade through silk. You heard her? Move! The room erupted into purposeful motion. I opened the binder to P2, ran my finger down the checklist I'd memorized in the dark. Dr. Quinn, I said, I need you to make a decision. We can restore enough for compliance and payroll, keep us legal, or we can restore production first. Not both. The generators, if we can start them manually, won't handle the full load. Compliance, Greaves said immediately. The SEC will. Production. Quinn overruled. We can beg forgiveness from regulators. We can't unbankrupt ourselves. Thunder crashed again, close enough to make everyone flinch. Through the loading dock windows, I saw another transformer explode in the distance. The entire eastern seaboard was dying, and we were trying to resurrect one small corner with string and spite. My phone buzzed. Jonah. Panels live, HVAC circuit holding. Then Rena. 3 confirmations. They're coming. Who's coming? Brandon demanded. The people who remember how things actually work, I said. Retired engineers, former facilities staff, the ones you called redundant human capital in your efficiency reports. Elsa appeared in the doorway, covered in dust and cobwebs. NAS units are up. 28% battery. Where do you want them? Follow me, I said, standing. Quinn, you have the room. If Brandon speaks, ignore him. You can't? Brandon started. Actually, Greaves said, his voice quiet but firm. She can. As of this moment, Lydia Hart has full emergency authority. Anyone who disagrees can explain to the board why they prevented our recovery. I didn't smile. There wasn't time. But I did catch Quinn's eye as I headed for the stairs, and saw something there that looked like vindication. 17 minutes, I called back, starting now. The real work was about to begin. Everything up to this point had been foreplay. Now came the resurrection. One circuit at a time, while Brandon's perfect cloud stayed frozen at 41%. A monument to the danger of forgetting that everything digital ultimately depends on something physical. And I was the only one who remembered where all the physical pieces were buried. The 7th floor network closet smelled like dust and defeat. Noah had the first Dell server racked while I traced cables in the dark, my fingers reading the braille of Ethernet ports. Each connection was muscle memory from 2019, 2017, 2014. All the times the pretty systems had failed and the ugly ones had saved us. Phoenix Protocol, P2, I said aloud, more for my benefit than Noah's. Data path, bring up. The NAS units hummed their battery death song, down to 22%. We had minutes, not hours. I pulled the crossover cable from my binder's back pocket. Yes, I'd laminated a pocket into it and connected the primary NAS to Dell number 1. Boot sequence, I commanded. Noah's fingers flew across the keyboard we'd stolen from accounting. The screen flickered green on black. Beautiful as sunrise. BIOS 2.1.4. Legacy boot. It's asking for authentication, Noah said. I flipped to the page I'd labeled When Everything Dies. 6 months ago, I'd created local admin accounts on these machines, passwords written in my binder. Brandon never knew they existed because they'd never touched his cloud. Username, Phoenix. Password, capital B Burn INH3, exclamation, exclamation. Seriously? Type it. The system accepted it like an old friend. Command prompt. No GUI, no pretty interfaces, just raw functionality. Perfect. Mount the NAS. Pull the November snapshot of the payroll database first. Avery's about to have a heart attack. My phone buzzed. Jonah. Generator 2, responding to manual prime. Need someone small to reach the intake valve. Send Rena, I replied. She's done helping the phone tree. Through the window, I could see flashlights converging on the building, the retired engineers Rena had summoned. Old-timers who'd built these systems before Brandon was out of business school. They knew every junction, every weakness, every beautiful redundancy that modern efficiency had tried to eliminate. Payroll database restored, Noah announced. Where to? Accounting's local printer server. It's still on the emergency circuit. I smiled in the dark. Brandon never knew it existed because it wasn't on the network map. Patrice from HR hardwired it during the 2019 outage. Another buzz. Elsa. Production floor's asking about the robots. Tell them to check manual storage locker M7. The old control tablets are there. Brandon called them obsolete, but they'll run local command sequences. How do you know this? Because I put them there. Last Tuesday, while Brandon was streaming about innovation, the lights flickered, not on, but trying. Generator 2 was fighting to life. I heard its diesel roar through the walls, then steady into a rhythm. Emergency circuits only. But it was a start. Holy shit, Noah breathed. The Dell screen showed file structures blooming like flowers. The compliance documents, they're all here. November versions, I corrected. But better than nothing. Dana can explain the gap to the SEC. Copy them to the second Dell, then push to any local storage that's breathing. P3 was the hardest, cascading boot. I'd drawn this sequence 50 times, refined it in the dark of storage room B2. Legacy systems to hybrid, 2, if we are very lucky, partial cloud restoration. Dell 3 through 5 online, Marcus called from the doorway. Your retired engineers are handling the freight elevator like they own it. They built it, I said, in 1987. Same year as the original electrical backbone we're about to abuse. I opened the binder to the page marked with red tabs, the timing sequence. Everything had to happen in order, or the systems would crash trying to authenticate against each other. Mark, I called. Start the sequence, Dell 1, primary domain controller, 30 seconds. The old server groaned to life, its fans screaming protest, but the login prompt appeared. Dell 2, database mirror, wait for sync, now. Green lights cascaded across improvised network switches. Equipment pulled from the electronics recycling bin Brandon had scheduled for next week. Production floor has partial power, someone shouted from below. Tell them to wait, I shouted back. If they draw full load now, we'll blow the generator. But I could hear it, the beautiful sound of systems talking to each other. Not through the cloud, but through actual cables, actual connections, actual infrastructure that existed in the real world. External connectivity test. I told Noah. Ping something. What? Anything. Google, CNN, hell, ping Brandon's LinkedIn profile. He typed, waited, then, reply from 8.8.8.8, 12 milliseconds. We have internet, minimal, but it's there. I pulled out my phone, checked the cloud portal, still 41%. But now it didn't matter. We were building around it, under it, despite it. The overhead lights flickered again, then caught, not full brightness. We were running on generator and careful load balancing, but enough to see faces. Noah was grinning, Elsa was crying. Even Marcus, professional as always, had a smile cracking his security guard facade. Status report. Quinn's voice from my phone. I checked my watch. 14 minutes, 30 seconds since we'd started. Payroll operational. Compliance documents accessible. Production floor can restart at 30% capacity. Full restoration in, I calculated quickly, 20 more minutes. And the cloud? I looked at the status screen, still 41%. Brandon's perfect system, frozen in its perfect failure. The cloud is irrelevant, I said. We've routed around it. Through the phone, I heard something beautiful. Arthur Greaves laughing, not bitter, not angry, but genuinely amazed. Bring it home, Lydia, he said. I closed my eyes, felt the building's pulse through the floor. Electricity flowing through paths Brandon never knew existed. Systems awakening in sequences he'd never imagined. The old bones of infrastructure carrying us forward when the pretty promises had failed. Copy that, I said, and opened my eyes to see my binder, coffee-stained and perfect, sitting next to million-dollar servers we'd rescued from the recycling bin. Time to finish what Brandon had started, just not the way he'd intended. The war room had transformed. What started as panic and darkness now hummed with controlled energy under the emergency lighting. Every status board showed green, hand-drawn on whiteboards because the digital displays were still dead. The coffee-stained binder sat closed on the conference table, its job done. Arthur Greaves stood at the window, watching the city slowly flicker back to life. 28 minutes, he said. You brought us back in 28 minutes. 27 minutes, 43 seconds, I corrected. But who's counting? The room was full now. Department heads, engineers, even some of the production floor workers who'd manually restarted their lines using the tablets I'd hidden. Everyone except Brandon, who'd disappeared somewhere around minute 15. 2 questions, Greaves said, turning from the window. First, who authorized the decommissioning of our backup systems? Marcelle Quinn produced a folder, an actual paper folder, from her briefcase. Every memo, every approval, every signature. She placed it on the table. Brandon Vale's name appeared on every page. Second question, Greaves continued. Who confirmed that our vendor had completed the cloud redundancy setup? Another paper from Quinn's folder. Another Brandon Vale signature. The door opened. Security escorted Brandon in, his designer shirt soaked through, his hands shaking slightly. He looked at the paper trail, then at me, then at the binder. This was sabotage, he said weakly. She planned this. I planned for this, I corrected. There's a difference. You created the vulnerabilities. I documented them. You eliminated the safeguards. I preserved them. You bet everything on a system you didn't understand. I understood both systems. Mr. Vale, Greaves said quietly. Security will escort you to gather your personal items. Brandon's badge beeped one last time as security deactivated it, a small, final sound that echoed in the room. He turned at the door, mouth open as if to deliver some parting shot, but found nothing. The future he'd promised had died at 41%. He left in silence. Lydia, Greaves began, but I held up my hand. The West Wing still has 2 power coupling issues. The production floor's running through a bypass that won't hold more than 6 hours. And someone needs to call our insurance company before they hear about this from someone else. That's not what I was going to say. He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in years. I was going to ask if you'd accept your old position back, with a significant adjustment in compensation. My old position doesn't exist, I said. Brandon eliminated it. Then we'll create a new one. Chief Resilience Officer. Report directly to me. I looked at Quinn, who nodded, then at the binder. Its coffee stains now looking like badges of honor. On one condition, I said. We maintain physical backups, always. No matter how redundant they seem, no matter how perfect the digital system appears. Paper copies, local servers, and at least one person who knows how it all really works. Done. I picked up the binder, ran my hand along its spine. Then I need to go check those power couplings. The storm's not over, and we're running on borrowed time. As I headed for the door, Elsa called out, Lydia? The cloud restoration finally moved, 42%. I laughed. Actually laughed. Tell it we're good. We found another way. The hallway was busy with people fixing, building, reconnecting, not through pristine fiber optics, but through dusty cables and determination. Rena passed me, carrying a box of the old control tablets. "Hey, boss," she said. "My dad wants to know if you're hiring. Tell him we're always hiring people who understand that everything digital ultimately depends on something physical." At my folding table by the loading dock, I'd keep it, a reminder, I opened the binder one last time. On the inside back cover, I wrote, August 8th, 2025. System restored via Phoenix Protocol. Time to restoration, 2743. Cause of failure, hubris. Cause of recovery, memory. The lights above flickered to full brightness as the main grid came back online. Through the window, I could see the last of the storm clouds breaking apart, revealing stars. Somewhere in those stars, satellite uplinks were trying to reconnect to our cloud infrastructure, finding it still frozen at 42%, wondering why nobody seemed to care. I closed the binder with a satisfying snap. Tomorrow, I'd start building the next one. Because storms always come back. Systems always fail. And someone needs to remember how to fix things when the pretty promises break. Brandon's legacy would be a cautionary tale told in IT departments for decades. Mine was 200 laminated pages that proved sometimes the dinosaurs survive the meteor. And sometimes they even get the last laugh. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of corporate revenge and old school triumph, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Lydia's position? Let me know in the comments.